Be the Talk, episode 298, featuring Jackie Corcoran. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Jackie Corcoran. Jackie, are you ready to talk?
I am ready to talk.
Jackie Corcoran's mission is to empower her clients to make the lifestyle changes that they seek in order to become their best and healthiest version of themselves. As a holistic health coach, Jackie helps busy, driven people strengthen their mindset and bolster their self-esteem. Jackie Corcoran, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Nathan. Good to be here.
Well, your talk is called Resolution 2040, and it's a kind of a future-oriented talk because you imagine the time in the year 2040 when the United States is no longer number 28 in health. And I love how you identify the key to the amount of money that we throw at healthcare versus the results that we get as a society. It's really because of our relationship to time and our scarcity-based mentality with which we approach health and the amount of time that we make for our health. Jackie, please take us behind the talk.
I would love to. You really did a great synopsis of the talk. And in the writing of the talk, what I learned, that's a TEDx talk. That talk was really created thanks to a group of people. And so I would write the first draft, and then they would get back to me and say something like, well, what does it mean to be healthy? And that would make me really have to think, well, that is a different thing for a lot of people. And so it sent me down this really a road of investigation of what does health really mean and what's really keeping us from it. And as a health coach, the number one thing that I always hear is, I am so busy. I don't have the time. And the truth is, we do lead really full lives. And it is so easy to go to a drive-through, get inexpensive, hot, salty, fatty, sweet food, and get on with the day. And eventually, that accumulates into a lot of bad things. And, the ramifications of that are incredible. But in time, I had 7 minutes to do that talk. And time was just one of the pieces that I think really have led us to this not such great state of health in our country. Another really big one that I wanted to talk about, and perhaps this is for a future talk, is this. Well, actually, 2 things. The feeling of guilt that we have in putting our health first. And we don't even know where we got that. I mean, so many people, if you say, well, where did that guilt come from? They'll say, I don't know, but it's really real. And I feel like if I do this healthy thing for myself, then I am neglecting my work. I'm neglecting my family, when in reality, if we are taking better care of our health, we are better at serving our families. We are better at serving, our clients or whomever we work for. And so the question is, and I actually got this question from a book and I pondered it for a long time, is it a moral obligation to take care of our own health? And I think it is. And then the third piece is that as Americans, we have this kind of staunch, pull up your bootstraps and we're, solo kind of people and you just got to get the job done, when in reality, that doesn't work for anybody. I mean, there might be the one lone cowboy who rides off happily into the sunset every day, but even he needs to make some connections, some heartfelt, real connection.
Jackie, you mentioned the sense of guilt that is still out there for many people, and you mentioned the lifestyle, the fast food lifestyle that we have. I know some of the people that I follow, they've explained it very well. Like when you're on a plane and they're doing their safety preparations, what we're ordered to do is to instead of putting our neighbor's air mask on first and checking out your neighbor, they say, no, get your own air mask, put that thing on first, and then check your neighbor, make sure everybody else is okay after you're okay and taking care of yourself. And I think that there's a growing awareness of the need of self-care. If we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not doing the hard work of leading ourselves, doing things that we don't want to do in the moment for the sake of a better future, that we actually go from being able to be an asset to society and help other people to a major potential liability. So, there's more understanding and awareness of that. Tell me a little bit about the kind of work that you've been doing with corporations to just help, I imagine, executives, CEOs, managers, department heads. What kind of things do you do, and what do you do to maybe get past the resistance that you might encounter? Or set me straight if there's never any resistance.
I love that question. There's always resistance. And the reason people come to me is because they've been trying and there's some missing piece that they can't see. And why isn't it lasting? Why is this not sustainable? And so one of the things I love to do, if you are the CEO, if you are a high school student, is there is a method that I use to uncover people's hidden blocks, their fears, their subconscious fears. And they seem so crazy and irrational, but they're really real. If we are wanting to be better communicators, let's say, because that's going to have put us into a healthier relationship or help us communicate better with our coworkers, we might think, well, then I have to actually be kind of vulnerable. Well, yeah, that might be good. So what are your fears around being vulnerable? And then we kind of go through a series of very short questions. And we might find that if I allow myself to be vulnerable, I'll get kicked out of the tribe. People will see me for a person they don't like. They will misunderstand me. They'll use my words against me. I mean, the list goes on. And so then we can look at those fears and say, well, no wonder you're afraid of being vulnerable. Or no wonder you're afraid of putting your self-care first. That makes perfect sense now. Now let's actually test those fears out in a really safe way. And so, regardless of who, and I've done this just, with people within corporate talks where we're in a big group as well. And it doesn't get as intimate, but they still get the gist of what we're up to.
Well, we're bringing up the issue of corporate culture. And I think we have a situation where you have the market leader and they have the best culture and they read Brene Brown and listen to her TED Talk on vulnerability and they embrace it and even maybe model some of that so it becomes a little safer. But the number 2 runner up, the number 3, and all the way down the chain, it might not be that safe to really share. So how do you as a coach really walk that tightrope between acknowledging kind of the realities of the world and making incremental baby step progress with people?
We choose one thing at a time. And that is another reason that people really need coaches, because they want to do it all and they want to do it perfectly and they want to get it done in a hot second. And when they don't see results, then it just doesn't work and, on to the next thing. So I really help them take that down to a bite-sized baby piece of, okay, how can we test this? And then we'll, do some brainstorming and then we'll come up with, okay, so here's how you're going to test. And let's say it's a conversation where you are having to be vulnerable. Who's a person in your office who you can safely practice this with and maybe even have this discussion prior to? And so, we kind of do it that way so that they're not really throwing themselves into the fire, and in a way that's very measurable so that we can say, well, how did that go? How did that feel? And then eventually, honestly, what happens is they find that 99% of the time, the fears are unfounded. And in fact, the opposite is true. They have deeper connections. There's more respect. There's more love because people, as Brene Brown talks about, they want to see us be vulnerable and real, like we all are, right?
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Jackie Corcoran. Her talk is called Resolution 2040, and we're about to pivot over to UTalk Universe because we are about to enter the Blitz round in just a moment, where we're going to talk with Jackie about the preparation and performance of her talk. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with the Blitz Round. It's time to ask Jackie Corcoran a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Are you ready, Jackie?
I am ready.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I applied.
How did that go for you?
The second year in a row.
Second year in a row.
Actually, I applied 2 years prior. This is for Bozeman TEDx. They said no. I was in a mastermind group. My mastermind friend 2 years later said, hey, TEDx, they're taking applications. And I said, I do not need to be humiliated again and feel rejected. Thank you very much. Talk about vulnerability. And she said, oh, be quiet. You have a thing. You want to talk about this thing of the country becoming the healthiest country in the world. And then I applied and it was horrifying. It was so scary.
Well, this is great because it illustrates the work that you're doing that you said in the last session. And then I love this, vulnerable and baby stepping and having somebody else coaching you. My question is, what changed from the first application to the second application 2 years later?
The first application was really more about self-love, and it wasn't hitting the mark for what they were looking for, and maybe felt a little too fuzzy.
Yeah. Well, and Montana's a pretty tough place, so that may or may not, like you said, hit the mark. I know with what we're talking about in the Get Accepted course, this is so important because you don't get the feedback, you don't get the response, you don't get any. This isn't American Idol where they hand you a microphone and you get rejected and then you can mouth off back at the judge panel. You don't get to do that. That's reality TV. This is real life. So I love, congratulations, for your persistence and landing that.
Hey, Nathan.
Yeah.
Real quick, Montana is a very tough state, and I now am a TEDx speaking coach for Bozeman and Big Sky. And the 2018 TEDx Bozeman, I was the speaking coach of a guy named Micah Fink, who is a former Navy SEAL. Who has an organization, a nonprofit called Heroes and Horses, where he takes vets out into the forest for 30 days at a time. He is as tough as they come, for sure.
Oh, I bet. Beautiful country out there as well. I've been close. I've never been to Montana per se. Here's my next question. Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
For that particular talk, I was 100% a memorizer, and that was a mistake on my part.
Fight, flight, or freeze. I've heard there's a third option, which is to freeze. Yeah.
That's right. And it's not uncommon for speakers. And that's what happens to me when I get really nervous and in my head, I freeze. And so I froze in that, and there's some beautiful editing. So it's probably not easy for you to know. My mouth was so dry. My lips were sticking to my teeth, and I couldn't stop thinking about that. So all of a sudden it was like this little evil fairy came down from the theater and went boop and just popped all of the words out of my head. And I just stood there like, wow, it's pitch black in here. I got nothing. And if I had a few slides, even though it was a short talk, I could have used a few strategically placed slides to keep me on track.
Well, I mean, the fight, flight, freeze thing is absolutely huge. Do you, as a coach, do you advise people to blend? Do you advise them to improvise? I mean, when you're on the other end, you want people to be highly structured, as well as in the moment enough to be able to deliver it. But usually when we're coaching people, we err on the side of structure. So how have you evolved, or at least what do you do when you're working with other people?
Right now, my coaching style for TEDx specifically is hyperstructure, because it's a real limited time and people have a lot of stories to share. And so what we do is we cultivate this speech and we get each sentence down to this beautiful little gem that they can elaborate on for speeches to come. But every sentence that they say is intentional.
This is the cut for time question, Jackie. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Really, it was that I couldn't talk about the fact that this kind of independent, cowboy riding off into the sunset has such a negative impact on our health, as well as feeling like that we feel guilt around putting our own health first. I think those two things are so important, but I just didn't have the time.
Absolutely. And some things have to go. Fortunately, the overall impact of your talk universe, I couldn't tell that there was any issue with that. Great editing, but kudos to Jackie for obviously pausing and then restarting and finding some way to hydrate. Did they have water there for you for that purpose, or was this so tough in Montana that they didn't have the water on the side for the speakers?
It's that tough.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. If you're listening to this and you're an organizer or you're a member of a volunteer team, please just implement that extra water bottle or whatever you have so that people can hydrate. It's going to happen. It's the easiest thing that you can do as a leader and as a team member to keep the talks going and to put people at ease. Last question. What's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
A friend of mine from Toastmasters, Debbie Jameson, said before I did a pacha-kacha, 20 slides, 20 seconds, I did that prior to the TEDx talk. And she said, you have to do your talk at least 100 times before we'll talk. From actually either saying it from memory into a microphone or just out loud or videoing myself or even listening back to it when I was driving. But I had a little tally sheet and I hit my 100 mark.
Awesome. Well, we've been enjoying our conversation with Jackie Corcoran. Her talk is called Resolution 2040. And if you want to find out more information about Jackie, you can go to corcoranhealth.com. And we're also going to have a link to her talk on our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com, as well as a link to corcoranhealth.com where you can connect with Jackie. And in just a moment, we'll be right back for the final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with Jackie Corcoran. It is time for the final word of advice.
Okay. Final word of advice is to prioritize your own health, please. The number one thing that we can do to become the healthiest country in the world by 2040 is to prioritize our health and notice if there's guilt around it and release that guilt, knowing that we are actually doing a huge service to our family and our friends and our work by putting our health and well-being first.
Well, Jackie Corcoran, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.